Hello, creative souls. I'm Elizabeth, and thank you for joining me for these contemplations. Today, I want to talk about what it means to be organic. Um, what does that mean to you? We see organic come up in discussions around food. You may have even heard the term organic timeline and wonder what that means. But really choosing an organic path. So how do we do that? And why is it important? So if you're as old as I am in these Earth linear years, then you will remember when organic food wasn't in the grocery store. You might remember when organic food was in the grocery store because there wasn't inorganic food yet before it came back to organic food, which means that artificial pesticides and fertilizers and such weren't used on them. And as you know, we've been learning that those artificial compounds in our systems, if we look at our bodies, our beings as ecosystems, right, as well, those chemicals weren't there, and they wreak a lot of havoc, and they can cause a lot of illness and a lot of questionable what's going on. Why am I so tired? Why are my hormones and out of whack? And why is my biochemistry out of whack? Why am I not sleeping well? Why am I so irritable? Things like that. Why do my joints hurt? We're an entire ecosystem, and there are many reasons, and we're all our unique ecosystems, and we have different stressors, we have different supports, we have different means of expression and knowledge and sustenance for ourselves. That's all. And we have different toxins in our bodies. But at the same time, there are universal concepts that we as humans in this lifetime on this earth plane are experiencing. And we've become a bit disconnected from nature, to say the least. When, my grandparents, for example, always had a garden in their backyard, and their food was organic. They used, manure and things like that to deter, and little banging, tin cups on sticks blowing in the wind, right? Knocking the critter, keeping the critters away. But big owls, right? Plastic owls. So maybe that's artificial, right? But we're not when we ingest the artificiality, then there are different issues, right? So what we've been learning is that there is a reason to choose to eat organic food to maintain a natural, healthy ecosystem within our bodies. And I remember before Whole Foods existed, there were natural food stores in places, thank goodness, that carried this thread all the way through. But I remember when the demands started increasing for organic food, and it was skyrocketly expensive, and it still is more expensive. And there are so many reasons behind that as well. And I'm sure that you're well aware of. But when the prices for organic food started coming down, I would remember celebrating, like, yes, there's reaching this like critical mass of awareness, of acceptance and demand. That's what changes things. Our personal demand. Enough people embodied the concept of the significance of organic food in order to change their beliefs, their energy, and their demand for what they wanted, and spoke in words and with their money, buying things. And that's when you know, the grocery industry, the food industry starts adapting behind that because they're going to meet the demands of the people. That's one way to look at it. I mean, it can often seem like things are being pushed on us because it's a very strong energy of selling things to the masses, right? But what I want you to really remember is that it was our sovereign decisions in making these connections for our health and our well being and changing our personal choices and what we wanted that started to change the industry, right? That's sovereignty. And food is just one example of that. When you start eating organic vegetables, for example, and you start feeling better, and you have a history of perhaps, ailments, aches and pains, disease, maybe even cancer or heart disease, um, or autoimmune disease, or a whole combination of them, or even symptoms like I've suffered from migraines for what I'm recognizing now my whole life, though it was showing up in different ways, colic and abdominal migraines, and then of course the more traditional head migraine for the last um, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so. It's been really strong. And that's what led me to find some of these things out. But I had a very difficult time, and you may have too, getting answers to some of, common ailments like headaches. You go and get blood work done, for example, and everything comes out fine. And there are, maybe more pressing issues. They say you have fibromyalgia or something like that and aren't really sure what causes that or whatever. Well, in my journey, what I'd like to share, and many others are really aware of this. This has been going on for decades, where people are learning the connection between what they eat, the food, and their health. So then you start to realize when you're on that path that there's an organic way of looking at healthcare. And you start doing things that are alternative and with some success and with some not so much success. One of the reasons for not so much success is because if it's built, what you're doing, what we are doing, what some alternative paths, if they're based on the same exact pattern of conventional medicine, for example, like, well, take this drug, for example, for your headaches, they'll go away. But what's really happening is they're not going away. It's just getting an ease for the pain. And when my pain was so intense that the drugs did nothing, I figured I was better off not taking the drugs at all. So I stopped doing that because I knew it was just it wasn't going for the root cause. When we start going after the root cause and we start making changes in our diet and our lifestyle, and we start feeling exponentially better, holistically better, then we really start to internalize the notion that there's an organic way of healthcare, for example. And it isn't just taking herbs as a band-aid, because that's the same thing as taking the conventional pill. I went through a big time where I just was throwing all these supplements at myself. I had a huge bin filled with all of these different recommended, nutrients, herbs, all kinds of stuff. And then I got to the point where, okay, well, I don't think that this is really getting to the root cause either. So let me set that bin aside and take another route. So I started getting deeper with what it meant to be organic with my healthcare and my lifestyle choices, for example. Once you start doing that, then you begin to realize that organic can apply to everything. It's a holistic perspective on life itself and all of the many decisions that we make. I come from a background in sustainable design, landscape architecture, natural building, community development, and for decades, I dedicated myself also to, planting a lot of trees and specifying non-toxic materials in design of the built environment. So then you begin to realize that the housing market, for example, isn't organic, and it drives you kind of crazy thinking about all of that and why is it not that, and if we actually designed with the sun in mind, with the wind in mind, with the soil and the topography in mind, and the materials we use, we could reduce energy use exponentially if we got back in line with an organic way of building. Okay, so this is another aspect. When we're home, within the home, and we're making choices on what to buy, well, do I buy this dish towel? Do I buy this sofa? Do I buy this notebook? How's the notebook being made? What are the materials? What are the processes? Who's doing it? Is it fair trade? All of these things we start to realize are clothes. So there's evidence in our world for the increased demand in all of these things, right? But there's also a lot of fear. There's a lot of like sensationalist fear around oh no, have we ruined, things? Are we doomed? And what I want, sorry, my hair's a little, there we go. Okay, what I want to emphasize is that our reconnection with nature is vital, and it is resilient, and it is extremely dynamic and extremely powerful, and can repair itself quickly with our increased awareness. So if we start making all of these choices in our everyday lives, each one of us starts making these little shifts in our choices, just like we started buying organic food. There is a profound effect that can have when we do it en masse. Instead of spiraling in the fear of it. It's the same thing with recycling. Remember when, plastic bottles became, and glass bottles, everything started coming in, and it became, an issue, and recycling programs started. There were a lot of people who said, well, my contribution isn't going to matter. So I'm just throwing my garbage out. It's easier, right? Than, to put it all in one bin than to use separate bins. There was a lot of that. I remember the resistance to that. But then more people got involved, and it started making a difference. We have new problems with that now. And we have to go back and resolve and be resilient with many of these things. There's up-leveling and upgrading that can occur in our systems and in our demand patterns and in the production patterns as our awareness increases. So there's always hope there. There's always hope there. And the more you can connect all of these dots in your life, the more powerful you can be in reclaiming your personal organic timeline. Our physical choices affect our emotional choices, affect our mental choices, affect our spiritual choices. And every combination therein, spiritual, thought affects the physical, the emotional affects the spiritual, the yeah, the physical affects the spiritual. I mean, it's every single combination. But if you can find an avenue that makes sense to you, that's important to you, that you're really inspired by, to start taking some of these organic pathways, um, the ones that you're already taking, a little more deeper, a little more deeply, a little more broadly, and then bringing in your tertiary reasons, your other, whether it's choosing, for example, to stop buying something that you know isn't quite really good for your health, your home, and the environment, and find a, a natural organic replacement for that. And then every time you start to go order something online, for example, ask yourself the same questions instead of just automatically going to do that. And that's how we can change our lives organically. And that's how we, when we do that collectively, can affect the whole. This is how one could, as a society, as a global citizenship, take the steps toward climate health, right? Which that's a whole nother topic. And I think that there are a lot of people who have a lot more awareness of different variables than what we're talking about here. And it's a yes, and it's hearing all of the different variables. And it's also speaking up and sharing your perspective and your point of view to contribute to that constellation of understanding, because it's not just about climate. It's not climate, it's everything. It's organic everything. Yeah. So, what does organic mean to you is what I ask this week. Okay. Thank you, dear ones. Take good care. Good health.